Would you tell your daughter to scream during free throws? How about spilling a drink on the court to stop the game?
Rajon Taylor bumped, and there is some spillage on the floor.
Would you intentionally hurt the other team's star in the playoffs? No? Good. That means you're a way better person than these NBA cheaters. First up, Rajon Rondo. He's not a bad dude, he's just a little nasty ass. Rondo played in the NBA for a long time and works very hard. All of this makes him pretty sweaty. And hey, you gotta do something with all that sweat, right?
And one rebound away, not one assist, but in other words, he's filling the stat sheets, he's doing it all.
The unfortunate fellow who had to shoot free throws after this was Golden State's Draymond Green. Rondo and Green didn't get along. Draymond spied on the Pelicans' huddle during a playoff game in 2018. And the two got face-to-face a couple of different times during the series.
Draymond Green and Rondo getting into it again.
Rondo may not have started this beef, but he ended it in the grossest way possible. Now, technically, there's no rule about what NBA players do with their sweat. So Rondo might not have been cheating, but this next one is for sure against the rules. Putting sticky stuff on the ball for some extra grip has been a hot topic in both baseball and football. Nobody ever thought to check NBA players for sticky hands. Turns out they should have, because Dwight Howard had been cheating for years before he was finally caught. Howard's Rockets were in Atlanta and Dwight checked into the game right before Paul Millsap's second free throw. Howard seemed intent on getting his hands on the basketball, and he began massaging it real passionately. Just like you should be massaging that subscribe button right now. While over at the bench, Dwight had just doused his hands with Stickum, a glue that was very popular with NFL receivers back in the day. A little goes a long way with this stuff. Millsap noticed immediately that the ball was sticky.
And Millsap's telling him to look at the ball. Must be sticky.
The refs didn't know where it came from, though, so they warned both benches that Stickum is illegal. Hawks coach Mike Budenholzer immediately ratted out the Rockets. I mean, look, they had the cans of it sitting right there. Warnings were handed out, but nobody got punished. After the game, Howard basically said, "Yeah, I've been using that stuff for a long time." The refs had to go pull out their spare basketball to finish the game. Good thing they had a backup. Someone else who learned the importance of keeping a backup is former Nets coach Jason Kidd. He always carries a spare drink with him on the sideline. Late in the fourth quarter of a 2-point game between the Nets and the Lakers in 2013, Rajon Taylor bumped into Coach Jason Kidd while he was trying to take a drink on the sideline. Soda and ice went everywhere, and the interns had to come in and wipe it up.
Jason Kidd and Rajon Taylor bumped, and there is some spillage on the floor.
Is this cheating? Doesn't look like cheating, right? It's an honest mistake. Ha! Don't be so naive. This is Jason Kidd back in 2011 as a guard for the Dallas Mavericks. In this game, Kidd's teammate Dirk Nowitzki was shooting 2 free throws to tie it late in the fourth quarter in Oklahoma City. Dirk sank the first one, but before the second attempt, some water mysteriously got spilled in front of the Thunder bench. You know the old icing the kicker trick in the NFL? This is the NBA equivalent. Icing Dirk by causing a water cleanup. You can see Jason Kidd witnessing the whole thing thinking, damn, that's a smart idea. Now, Dirk is a pro. He knew it was all gamesmanship and he didn't care. He calmly sank the second free throw.
Clutch.
But he did bring the trick to the refs' attention.
15 in the fourth have tied the game. And if you're Scott Brooks, you've got to ask.
Jason Kidd waited 2 years until he was the head coach of the Nets and then decided to use a version of this trick himself. Nobody caught it live, but it was no accident that Rajon Taylor bumped into Kidd on the sideline. Kidd literally asked for it. Jason Kidd intentionally spilled a drink on the court to get a free timeout. It wasn't just water either. This looks like soda. That means they needed to use soap for the stickiness instead of simply wiping it up with a rag and getting on with the game. During the extended pause in action, Kidd was able to draw up a play to get Paul Pierce a wide-open three-pointer at the end of the game. Pierce missed the shot, so Kidd wasn't rewarded for his efforts, but the play did get them a clean look they otherwise wouldn't have had. After the game, the league clearly saw Kidd say "hit me" to Tyshawn Taylor and fined the Nets coach 50 bands. Jay Kidd's little soda spilling maneuver didn't work out, but this next cheater totally prospered. All it cost him was getting his 9-year-old daughter banned from the arena. A small price to pay for a playoff victory in the NBA. DeMar DeRozan is an NBA veteran and a bona fide scorer. His secret weapon isn't a quick release or a tricky layup package. Nope, it's a 4th grade girl.
What?
This is D Rozen, DeMar's daughter. His Bulls were taking on the Raptors in the 2023 Eastern Conference Play-In Tournament, and the loser of this game was going home. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The game was up in Toronto, but DeMar pulled his daughter out of school that day so she could do this.
Particular game to Florida State basketball.
You hear that? Every time Toronto was shooting a free throw in the game, there'd be this high-pitched shriek. No, it's not a Raptor. That was D Rozen screaming her little lungs out, trying to distract the shooters. Guess what? It f***ing worked. The Raptors were horrendously awful from the line in this game, missing 18 free throws and shooting just 50% from the stripe, despite averaging around 80% in the regular season. Chicago totally got outplayed in the game, but still won 109-105, thanks to all those misses from the line. The Raptors may have been eliminated, but they clapped back for banning DR from the arena for future games. Damn, Canada, that's cold. She's only 9. At least she has more time to watch our banger videos now.
18 for 36, so it had to have an effect. She did a great job.
If the Raptors had thought of this next trick, maybe they wouldn't have shot 50% from the line and been eliminated by the Bulls. There's nothing worse than a poor free throw shooter getting fouled and missing both shots, right? It's like a turnover. Brandon Jennings was thinking the same thoughts when his teammate Andrew Bogut was fouled in the third quarter of a close game back in 2010. Bogut was a terrible free throw shooter, hitting just 59.4% of his looks. The Bucks did not want Bogut at the line, so Jennings found a way to take advantage of some poor short-term memory by the referee. After the foul against Bogut, Jennings confidently walked up to the line and got ready to shoot some free throws, even though he wasn't even in the area of where the foul was called. Apparently, the refs forgot who was actually supposed to be at the line because they gave Jennings the ball. He made the first free throw. It wasn't until after this first make when the Rockets players began protesting and the refs went, "Oh shit."
He's an 81% free throw shooter. He walks to the line. Bogut, a 59% free throw shooter, he walks underneath. The Bucks are trying to pull a fast one. Nobody notices, including the ref.
You're not that 7-foot Australian guy who got fouled. The Zebras went back to the scorer's table, waved off Jennings' first free throw, and made Bogut shoot 2. You already know what's coming. The dude bricked both of them. Jennings tried, but he couldn't steal his team a couple of extra points. They really could have used him, because the Bucks lost by 3 that night. The next one wasn't just a harmless prank on the refs. This one was one of the dirtiest plays in basketball history, which might have robbed a team of a championship. It's time to talk about Zaza, not Gabor, Pachulia.
This is the moment I was waiting for all my life.
It's the 2017 Western Conference Finals. The Golden State Warriors are 67-15 and large favorites to win a championship. The only team standing between Golden State and the NBA Finals are the San Antonio Spurs, led by a prime Kawhi Leonard. The 2017 Warriors had so much firepower. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, and Zaza Pachulia? Who is this guy? Pachulia is a 6'11 center from Georgia, and he's known to be one of the dirtiest players in the NBA.
Stays alive. Pachulia hits the deck. Mirotić down there with him, and a whistle. What do we got? Oh, and a fight. Mirotić goes after Pachulia.
The Warriors were absolutely stacked, but the Spurs came into Oracle Arena in Game 1 of the series and were running shit. Midway through the third quarter, the Spurs were up 21 points when that piece of shit Zaza Pachulia struck again. His victim, the Spurs' best player, Kawhi Leonard.
Leonard fires from the corner. And Leonard goes down again. And he's in pain again in front of the Spurs bench.
Zaza knocked Kawhi out of the game, and the Warriors came back to win. Pachulia claims he didn't do it on purpose, but nobody's buying that. Dude has a track record. Coach Popovich did not hold back his thoughts in the post-game presser.
It's unsportsmanlike. It's just not what anybody does to anybody else. And this particular individual has a history with that kind of action. But this is crap. You ever hear of manslaughter?
With Kawhi out, the Warriors easily swept San Antonio. If Leonard stays in the game, there's no question the Spurs have a great chance to win this series. Zaza rewrote history with one super exaggerated closeout and instantly became the league's biggest villain. Missing out on a shot at the championship is about as bad as it gets. This next one might actually be worse, though. You make the call. It happened to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they brought it upon themselves. Back in the 90s, one of the hottest names in basketball was Joe Smith. No, not the founder of the Mormons, the #1 overall pick out of Maryland in 1995. It was the Golden State Warriors who selected Smith first overall that year. Ahead of big names like Kevin Garnett and Rasheed Wallace, Smith was pretty decent, averaging 17 points per game with the Warriors over his first 3 NBA seasons. He was on a very small $9 million rookie deal, and the kid felt it was time to get paid. Golden State offered him a massive $80 million contract extension, but Smith turned it down. He had his eye on even more money. The league was in the middle of a 6-month lockout in 1998 and 1999. There were no games, no practices, and no contract negotiations. Well, legal ones at least.
Yeah, boy.
Turns out that Joe Smith and his agent were cooking up something under the table. There wasn't a single team in the NBA that had enough cap room to offer Smith the amount of money that he wanted. He needed to find a way around the cap room. The solution? Bird rights. Named after Larry Bird, the bird rights exception in the NBA gives teams the ability to go over the salary cap to sign their own free agents. How does one earn bird rights? It's easy. Just play for the same team for 3 years in a row. Smith and his agent secretly approached the Minnesota Timberwolves with a sneaky backroom deal. The Wolves agreed to sign Smith to 3 very small contracts in order to gain bird rights. Then, they could go over the salary cap to give him a monster contract in 3 years. If this all worked out, Smith would make back the $80 million he turned down and then some. The two parties shook hands behind closed doors and agreed to the deal behind the league's back. As soon as the lockout ended, Smith inked a 1-year deal with Minnesota worth $1.75 million. Whoa, hold up, $1.75 million? Didn't this dude just turn down $80 million? That's hella sus. While it may have raised some eyebrows that Smith signed with Minnesota for so cheap, there had just been a 6-month lockout. Weird things were happening all over the NBA, so nobody could prove that Smith and the Timberwolves had colluded on this contract. Smith played out the rest of the 1999 season on that small deal. Then he did it again in 2000 and again in 2001. A promising young rookie signing 3 small contracts in a row with one team? Red flags everywhere. The league investigated and immediately found what Smith and the Timberwolves were up to, and it was totally illegal. It's called salary cap manipulation, and it's expressly forbidden in the league's collective bargaining agreement. Both Smith and the Timberwolves franchise were punished severely. Commissioner David Stern voided all 3 contracts that Smith had signed with Minnesota. This meant that Smith didn't gain anything toward his bird rights and that he wouldn't be eligible for the big contract he was banking on. After leaving as a free agent and playing for the Pistons for a year, Smith returned to the Timberwolves for the 2001 to 2002 season on a $34 million deal. Let's do some quick math here. Smith turned down $80 million with the Warriors and then signed a few years later for $34 million. That's a net loss of $46 million. By denying Smith his bird rights, the league essentially fined him $46 million. Some would argue that the punishment for the Minnesota Timberwolves was even harsher. There was a fine of $3.5 million, but that was hardly the worst of it. Both Minnesota's owner and GM were suspended from contact with the team for over a year. That's pretty damaging. But again, not the worst of it. In one of the hardest punishments in NBA history, David Stern stripped the Wolves of their next 5 first-round draft picks. This meant Minnesota would not pick until the second round in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, and 2005. This would spell doom for any professional sports team, especially a small market franchise like the Timberwolves, who relied on the draft to stockpile talent. Eventually, David Stern realized he was a little tough on Minnesota and gave them back their first-round picks in both 2003 and 2005. These were the biggest cheaters in NBA history. The only cheating that really gets under our skin is when people stop watching after one video. That's just wrong, bro. Come on, have another.